Thinking about choosing between the 35 and the 50mm lens for your photography? One gives you wide shot while the other offers that creamy background blur we all love. But which one is really the right lens for you? In this video, we will dive into side-by-side comparison with real-world portrait test and more. And we will also dive into everything you need to know to make the best choice for your style. So stick around. Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Anshu and I have been a photographer for over 15 years now. Now, my aim with this channel is to make photography simple. Now, today is a very interesting video and I'm going to be comparing two very popular focal length. That's the 35 and the 50mm. Okay, before we begin, I also wanted to just mention that I'm not doing a comparison between a zoom lens and just sticking with a 35 and a 50mm focal length, but I'm actually using two different lenses. So I'm a prime lens shooter. I don't think so I own any zoom lens, and you can go ahead and maybe this comparison will work on most of the prime lenses. So the lens which I am using today is the Sigma 35mm 1.4 art lens, and for the 50mm I am using a 50 1.8 S lens from Nikon, which is the lens for the mirrorless. Now, though the Sigma lens is a FX lens, I use a F to Z converter to use it on my mirrorless. So just to give you an example, now I am shooting on my 35mm lens. So now I changed my lens and I have shifted on the 50mm lens, and definitely the field, the range of field would have now become more zoomed in. Now I will shift back on my 35mm lens and will continue the video on that. Okay, so let's start with some of the basics. Now, what's the difference between the focal length of a 35mm and 50mm? Now, obviously the 50mm will give you a wider range of field, which is like you'll have more area in your frame rather than when compared to a 50mm, which is more zoomed version when compared to your 35mm. So if you're just trying to decide and you want to pick either of these lenses, whether it's the 35 or the 50mm prime, and probably trying it, say, for different kinds of genres like maybe still life or portraits, then this video is probably for you. And or if you're just curious about knowing how these two lenses perform in terms of taking different kinds of photos, then this video is also for you. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm outside and let's do a field test. I have my Sigma 35mm lens as well as my Nikon 50mm. So currently I'm shooting on my 35mm and will try out both the lenses and click some portraits of my daughter, and let's see how the results are. Let's give you a kind of a field test. So I am on my 35mm and let me just try to zoom in and zoom out. Probably it will start getting distorted once I zoom in. Maybe let me move, and probably I'm shooting at 1.8, so you can even see the bokeh behind. Okay, so I have changed my lens, but it's still on the tripod, so the distance has not eventually changed, and now I'm on my 50mm lens. Let's zoom in. Probably you'll see some, yeah, it will be maybe a little zoomed. Let me just zoom back, and both the lenses I'm shooting at 1.8. Okay, so now for this one I have now shifted to the 35mm and I'll try to keep the distance same, and let's see how the results are. Okay, now I have kept the aperture at 1.8 again. So let's see how the background blur is with this. Okay, can you come closer? Now first let's try out the 35mm lens, and you will see that you can have a wider perspective with this lens. Now this can be perfect if you want to include more of the background in your photo and you want to show the context of your environment. Maybe you're in a park, or you're in a cafe, or you are in, say, some kind of a historical place, and you really want to show your background along with your portraits, then 35mm lens I feel is ideal for such kind of portraits. Now, a 35mm lens will give you a wider field of view, capturing more of the scene. Also, one factor you should always consider when trying to shoot between and compare between these two focal length is that a 35mm lens will be a true 35 on a full frame, but when you go for a cropped sensor camera, then a 35 could be effectively maybe something like a 50mm, which is actually what you will be getting when you shoot on a cropped camera. And similarly, a 50mm lens would be more cropped, and it would be something equivalent of 75mm lens. Now, whereas on the other hand, the 50mm lens has a narrower field of view and it will isolate your subject more, and you'll be getting less of your background. This also means there is more focus and more details which you can show of your subject in the photo. Okay, so I am now shooting at 50mm. Now I'll just come towards me. Yeah. I'll try to maintain the same distance with both 35 and this definitely makes it a very strong focal length if you want to capture more of, say, a facial features in your photos or portraits. And this will also eliminate some of the distraction in the background. So if you are in a place where you have a lot of distractions in the background and you don't want those distractions to be the focus of your photos, but you want to highlight the portraits in your subject, then 50mm lens will really work well in such scenarios. Okay, so I'm just trying to click a snap of my mom. I'm on 50 now. So next up, let's talk a little bit about distortion. Now, because 35mm is a kind of wider than how we normally perceive, there will be some element of distortion when you're trying to click photos with this. But on the other hand, 50mm is somewhat very true to how you perceive or how you see your subject. So it will eliminate most of the distortion. So I feel it's completely a personal choice in terms of how you want your photos to look like. Okay, so since we have seen some examples with these portrait session, let's go ahead and try out some still lives. This is my favorite kind of photography. So I'll be shooting the same still life and trying to keep the distance and conditions similar, and will show you what the differences is between a 35 and a 50mm lens. Okay, now next let's discuss a topic which is actually my favorite. That's the background blur or the bokeh. Now, obviously the reason why I always shoot with prime lens is to get that beautiful background blur, and there is a significant difference, I would say, when you're clicking with a 35mm and a 50mm lens. Just to keep the comparison even, I have shot both these lenses at 1.8. Now remember, with a 35mm lens, probably you will not get the most blurriest background, but I still feel the background is a very good balance between very out of focus and still being in focus, so that you can still identify what's there in the background of your subject. And if you really want to get a very nice, even creamier bokeh with a 35mm lens, for this I have a trick. So what you have to do is, like, you need to bring your subject closer to your lens, and though it will create some kind of a distortion in your photos, but still with bringing your subject more close to the lens, you'll be able to get more blurry background. And I feel with 35mm lens, it really gives a very nice artistic look. So hope seeing these examples gave you some idea about what's the difference between both these focal length. I wouldn't say one is better than the other, because I feel both these lenses have kind of a character with it, and with 35mm you do see some kind of distortion, but that also means it gives you a capability to be more artistic, more creative with your shots, whereas on the 50mm it is more true to life, more in terms of how you see the subject, and that also leads to another kind of creation. So I feel that choosing between both the lenses and the focal length is more a personal preference. If you really want to go for something which is more distorted probably, and include more of the background in your photos, then definitely 35mm lens is for you. And if you want to shoot something which is more like true to your life and how you actually see your subjects, then you should be going with a 50mm lens. Now, I would like to add that both these lenses are my favorite lenses, and they provide their own unique perspective to the photos. So for some situations, 35mm really works very well for me, and for some situations 50mm really works very well for me. Thank you so much for watching this video and sticking around till the end. If you found this video to be useful, then don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to my channel for seeing similar videos in future. I will see you in another video. Till then, happy clicking and bye.